Welcome to Decades of Horror, the 1970s.
The face of evil is ugly to look upon, and as the pleasures increase, the face becomes uglier.
This is episode 226, recorded October 9th, 2024.
Gruesome Magazine.
I am your host, Doc Rotten, and this podcast is about horror films released between 1970 and 1979. Each episode, my co-host and I will take a look at and even tackle another classic or not so classic film from this wondrous, groovy, gory, and influential decade. With me this week is my co-host, Jeff Mohr. Jeff, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. It's baseball playoff time.
Oh, yeah.
Baseball been very, very good to me.
Wow, I haven't heard that in a long time. Yeah, wow. All right. Also joining us tonight is Bill Mulligan, writer, director, special effects guru, published author. What is the name of the book, sir?
Hey. The name of the book is Raum, R-A-U-M. You can get it on Amazon.com. Lawyers versus Demons. Who wins? Who cares? We all win.
Oh, man. Who's the actual villain in that story? All right.
Hey, that's
And I am so happy to introduce our guest host. It's Mr. Dirk himself. How you doing, Dirk Rogers?
I'm very good. How are you guys?
Look at all that cool
Great.
shit.
Look at all that cool swag there. Yeah,
I know.
Geez.
Check me out. I'm in my man cave.
Nice.
Looks like you got something
King
from what's the thing behind you? What is the name of that thing? I keep forgetting.
This right,
that one.
right
yeah,
there.
your left hand.
That's the flying eye. What it
trouble.
sees, Lopan sees. From
Yes.
Big from Little China.
Low
And
band.
above it is one of the facehuggers from part 4.
Awesome.
That's one of the alien heads from part 4. That is a solid stone casting of Boba Fett's head from Empire.
Nice.
Predator head or Predator helmet, and sorry, I'm doing this backwards. And the throwing ring from part 2. Live casts, old Vincent Price, young Vincent Price, David Bowie, and Rutger Hauer. And then next to that, which you can barely see, that little square, that's a piece from the Tyrell Corporation, one of the miniatures that a friend of mine gave me.
That is so awesome.
That is
So awesome. So we're glad you are here to join us for a very special Amicus film. Well, we're pushing the limits of, we'll just stop there. Monster from 1971. This is going to be a lot of fun to talk about. We have a lot to probably say in varying degrees of positive and negativity. But before we do all that, I believe, Jeff Mohr, you have something to say about Play Now Media.
I do. We are partnering with Play Now Media, and in particular, they have a whole bunch of streaming channels that you can find on your viewing electromagic box that shows pictures and sound and stuff. In particular, Decades of Horror of the 1970s is on Wicked Horror TV. And in fact, today's movie can be found there.
Wow.
Yes. Wicked indeed. Yes, I watched it on the Classic Horror Movie channel.
Yeah, Classic Horror Movie channel also had it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Yep.
And we were also on that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Monster from 1971. Let's shall we just dive into this? Before we do, let's just say that we're going to give our first impressions, whether they be from 1970s or the last week, and whether it holds up today, and what are just generally what we think about. And then we're going to get into discussion about the film. It's the direction, the writing, the acting, and all these special things that go into. We're just going to get into all kinds of nonsense and crazy things, and then we'll wrap up with some feedback. Right, Jeff? We got feedback today.
We do.
Excellent.
We do have feedback.
Excellent. And of course, we want to invite you to hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons. Each click will help us find more horror fans just like you. That works, Dirk, right?
Do it.
That
Absolutely.
works. All right. Let's just jump in. Let's get looking at the card and go for it. All right. I, Monster, 1971, directed by Stephen Weeks. It's written by Milton Subotsky and based on Robert Louis Stevenson's novella from 1886, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, a well-known source material. The cast includes Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing, Mike Raven, Richard Herndal, George Merritt, Kenneth J. Warren, Susan Jameson, Margie Lawrence, Amy Delamain, and Michael Debar. The production company. That's one of the rare times I did all the names. Production company is Amicus Productions. Don't get me started. I'll flub up like the word "the." Filming location: Shepperton Studios, England. Filming dates started in October 10th, 1970. Release date was November 1971 in the UK, April 73 in the US. And the synopsis is: the 19th century London psychologist Charles Marlowe experiments with a mind-altering drug. He develops a malevolent alter ego, Edward Blake, whom his friend Utterson suspects of blackmailing Marlowe. Wah, wah, wah. That's not the most menacing description of a film, but let's find out what we thought of this. Even though I picked this monstrosity, we're going to start with Mr. Bill Mulligan. Bill, when did you first...
I was going to say, Doc, if it makes you feel any better, I thought that Amicus was pronounced Amicus for a long time, which is fine. I'm a kid, but
I thought it was Amicus.
Yeah, I was corrected by David Prowse at a convention.
So, of all the people, you know.
Womp womp. Yeah, how to look like a jerk in front of someone you're trying to impress. But anyway, so I saw this.
That one stuck, didn't it?
I haven't forgotten it since. I saw this a few days ago. I'd always wanted to see it, but it was never on, ever. And especially when I heard that it was, filmed in 3D. But not released in 3D, but okay, I'll talk about that a little later. So here's the thing. It's got Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee, two of my favorites. Peter Cushing is absolutely my favorite actor of all time. And It's based on Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I thought, this is one of those ripoffs where they changed the names. No, it says right in the opening credits, based on Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, yet there's no Dr. Jekyll and no Mr. Hyde. And I can only guess they figured, this story has been filmed so many times that if we tell people it's Jekyll and Hyde, no one's going to want to go see it because they've already seen 15 versions. And there's the problem. We have seen a whole bunch of versions. What makes this one particularly special? And I guess the one thing it has going for it is that it's maybe closer to the actual novel than a lot of the movie adaptations, which is interesting, but then kind of like every now and then they say, we're going to make a Frankenstein movie just like the original novel. Then you find out why nobody does that, because it's not really all that cinematic, the original novel. So the changes they made actually, kind of improved the story for cinema. It's a great novel. Don't get me wrong. And this one, I don't know. I just felt like, there's nothing much new here. Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde. I can see why they made that one. That's a cool twist. Or there's one out there where Mr. Hyde is actually better looking than Dr. Jekyll. He becomes young and suave. Okay, those are kind of cool. But this is just your basic Jekyll and Hyde story. Christopher Lee's having fun. I like that. I like seeing him chewing up the scenery and clearly having fun doing Hyde. You could tell when Lee's enjoying a meaty role, even if it's in a subpar movie like Franco's, Dracula. You can see when Lee at least is having a good time. So there's that, and Cushing is always great at what he does, but there's just not a lot here. I kind of expected a bit more, given the cast, given the pedigree. The screenwriters responsible for a lot of movies I really love. And there's a weird quality about it, which now I understand. So the 3D process. I love 3D. I've gone to see a lot of crap because it was in 3D. I'm looking right at you, Parasite.
Love that movie.
Yeah, when 3D suddenly had a resurgence, I'm like, oh boy, Revenge of the Shogun Women. I would go out and see these terrible movies just because I love 3D. there's a lot of different kinds of 3D. There's the kind we're familiar with the red, the red and the blue. There's the Polaroid version, which lets you see color. That's the better kind. Avatar is sort of a version of that. There's some high-tech ones that are just hard to deal with. There's the ones where if you wear certain glasses, red looks like it's close and blue looks like it's far away. That's not as great, but it is kind of cool in spook houses and haunts and things. And then there's this one. And this one, the whole basis is you wear these glasses. You can't get away from these glasses. One of them is dark and the other is not. And the eye that is seeing the darker one, I guess, is seeing the image just a little bit after the other eye, and therefore it puts it together. And if things are moving, there is a slight, and I mean slight, 3D effect. The only time I've ever seen this work to any degree was they sold a bunch during the Olympics or something, and figure skating looked really cool because figure skaters are always moving and the camera is always moving to follow them. And between those two things, you sort of like, yeah, it's kind of 3D. It's not at the level of a Viewmaster, but okay, I am getting a certain effect here. Trying to do this for a fiction movie, a narrative movie, is a terrible idea because you got to have that camera constantly moving, or the people have to be moving, or both have to be moving, and it looks weird. And there's scenes in this movie where they're clearly trying for that effect, but I think when they got it back and they looked through it with the glasses, they were like, there's nothing happening here. It's not a good enough effect to really, keep shooting like the entire movie where two people are having a conversation and we got to be swinging the camera around them like it's on a trapeze. It was a bad idea, and I'm glad they abandoned it. So, but there's enough of that in there that the movie just has a weird quality to it that's a little off-putting. But I am glad you picked it because I've always wanted to see it. Now I can check off that list. I don't know that I'll be revisiting it anytime soon unless somebody comes up with a much, much, much better print, because the one I saw was shaky.
Yeah, I've never seen any print that's better quality. I mean,
the fact that it exists at all, we should be happy. So
I probably.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Dirk.
Hi.
I just like calling you Mr. Dirk. When did you first see this movie? What was your first impression?
Well, the first time I saw the movie probably would have been about maybe 15 years ago. In my younger days, I got into a serious Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing kick, and so I went out and bought the DVD. And the quality isn't any better.
Well.
The one thing I will say about the DVD is that it actually comes with a reproduction of the original British press book, which is kind of cool.
Oh, wow.
Nice. Look at that.
For nerds like me who love that kind of stuff, physical media.
That's right.
And I hadn't watched it in a few years, and watched it just a couple of days ago for this. And I'll say this: it's a lean and mean movie. It's barely over an hour. It hits the ground running. The thing that I noticed about it that I'd never noticed before is, two things. One is that normally Jekyll is kind of the protagonist. And in the opening scenes of this, where he's about to, shoot himself up, and he just stops and grabs his pet cat and shoots it up and then kills it.
Yeah.
I was like, this isn't really, you don't really ever root for him. I think the audience surrogate kind of moves to Peter Cushing trying to help his friend out. But it's, I guess that's what I mean by it's lean in that it's a short film, and it's mean in that it just, I don't know. It's kind of cold. It just, there's not a lot of fluff in the film. You think you're going to be rooting for Christopher Lee, but he's so removed almost from emotion that he's happy to experiment on his pets, on his patients. And the one thing I did notice about it in this last watch that I did like a lot was the cinematography. I had never noticed how much the camera was doing really innovative kind of stuff. Like there's a scene where Christopher Lee reverts back into Mr. Hyde, and he's in a park, and he goes to like this empty cage, and there's a little girl on the other side, and the camera kind of spins around with them. And I just found that really neat. And then in some of the opening scenes when they're in the it's not a bar, it's like a gentleman's club kind of, but without naked girls, where they're all the doctors are discussing all of their different hypotheses about, the Freudian, the newest techniques that Freud was introducing, but the camera kind of tracks along with like one character and then comes around and faces another one. And I really enjoyed the cinematography a little bit more. It's not one of the better films of Lee and Cushing, but having said that, anytime those two are on screen together, the chemistry, I am in love. Any movie gets a pass card with those two operating on screen opposite each other. I love it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not one of the stronger Jekyll and Hydes. From my research, I figured the reason that they most likely changed the name is that, like Bill said, there's been a bunch of different versions of Jekyll and Hyde that have come out. And in fact, the year that this came out in 1971 was the same year that Hammer released Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde. So I'm going to guess that they probably changed the name to try to, get away from people going, well, I just saw that story, I don't want to watch this one as well. But yeah, it's a fun short watch. It's like an hour and 20 minutes, hour and 15 minutes or so. It depends. I guess there's an 81-minute version, a 75-minute version. For me, the high point is watching Lee and Cushing act off each other. And then the other little cameos of, like Michael Raven, the Karnstein, or for me, Richard Herndl, who played the first Doctor in Doctor Who's the Five Doctors. Seeing him in there was like, oh my God, I know that. So, but yeah, it's not a must see unless you are a huge aficionado of Lee and Cushing, which if you're listening to this podcast, you should be. So I would say check it out for that, but it's not a must watch.
Yeah, it had two doctors in it because Cushing was a doctor as well.
Indeed, and they both played William Hartnell, the first Doctor's character, in different aspects. So,
yeah, so it's kind of unique in that manner. For sure.
Agreed.
Yes, you Mulligan. What did you think of this? When did you first see it?
I just a few days ago. Same thing as I knew you kept talking about picking it. So
I did.
I was waiting until you picked it, but I was also kind of hoping we'd get a better version, and not dissing on Wicked Horror TV or Classic Horror Movie Channel at all, because it's like the only one out there in the streaming world right now. I did try to find, there is a Blu-ray that's for region playback region B2. So I ordered it. It was coming from England and it got damaged in shipment. And all of a sudden I had one message saying it would be here tomorrow. Another message saying, we just credited you this.
No.
I'm like, wait a minute. Anyway, it's Powerhouse Films on the Indicator label, which it does a lot of nice Blu-rays in England. But anyway, bummer, didn't get it. I don't know. I feel like I'm the kid in the Life cereal commercial, I guess it's the other way around. He doesn't like anything. I feel like I like it everything. I enjoyed this from the point of view of it being Amicus, also from the point of view of Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde with some twist. And I also liked the way it was shot. I'd really like to see a sharp, clear version of it.
Do you know if that Blu-ray that you ordered was remastered or?
It had a bunch of details on it. It's listed on Amazon. I think it's at a 2000K rescan or something, or remaster or something. I don't know. I might still order it. Anyway,
damaged, man. Yep.
So what did I like? I thought Lee was awesome in this, and he does have a lot of fun. And he plays a variety. There's stages of his changeover. When he first changes, he's not that different looking, but he immediately facial expressions and body language and everything changes until later on when he gets, you know, that quote we had at the beginning about how ugly you get. Yeah, that's a good example of that. But there was a lot of cool little shots. There was this one scene with the and I don't know where it came from, if it was a dream or a memory or what it was, where you see a little kid and he's looking and seeing a person who's supposed to be Lee, but he's got like a mask on or something.
Oh yeah, the mouthless mask or whatever.
Yeah, and then he bends down, kills the kid. The kid's laying there. And then we hear the other doctor, or the character played by Mike Raven, is telling this story to Cushing or Utterson about this little girl that was killed, and he watched it, and the guy, you know, whatever. I thought that was kind of cool. And then just weird little things like that. When he starts to change uncontrollably, he's sitting out in the park, and he's made the decision not to be Blake anymore. And he's sitting out in the park, and his hands start, you know, contorting, and that's the sign that he's changing. And he goes staggering off, and he comes to this, I don't know what you call it, but it's like a circular thing with bars. And there was
like an empty zoo cage almost.
Yeah. And there was a little girl on the other side, and he's up against the bars looking. I thought that was kind of a nice shot.
I like, sorry to cut in, but I like that in that scene, he kind of does the Frankenstein, like friends.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
I picked up on that. That was really cool.
Yeah, he hisses at a kid earlier in that.
Yes.
Well, and then when he's showing Lanyon or Richard Hernball that who he is, he keeps hounding him. Where's Marlowe? What have you done with Marlowe? And so he injects himself and changes right in front of him. But the way they show it is with the shadow on the wall. I thought that was really nice. And then he walks into view, which of course then the shadow walks out of shot. I just thought that was pretty cool. And then finally the big fight scene with Cushing with it seemed kind of anticlimactic to fall down the stairs. I certainly expected him to fall out of a building or something. I don't know, but he falls down the stairs, but then he was on fire in the room because this lamp fell over and it started stuff on fire, and he got it on him, and he's laying there on the ground and he's smoking.
I thought that was cool.
I just thought it was really cool. And then they actually do, even though they avoided showing the change with the shadow shot, then they do show it like a lap dissolved change.
Yep.
Of him laying on the floor. So
and it's
anyway,
really smooth too.
I enjoyed it. I thought he was good, and he was nasty. I mean, right off the bat, he kills that cat, and you're going, whoa, and you're not even the bad guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't endear yourself to the audience very much.
That's where it lost my wife.
Oh yeah, I bet it did. All right.
yeah.
Well, yep. So I picked this movie because I fondly remember pictures of it from magazines. I think we have one of them coming up in our shots for those who get to see this on YouTube. And I actually got to see this on the afternoon horror movies that they would do every once in a while during the week. They would do movies, back in the 70s, before we got, what was it? The after school specials, before after school specials took over, they would show like a week's worth of movies in the afternoon in DC area where I grew up. And this came on one day and I watched it and I was so excited, and it's stuck in my head. I've never seen it since, but it's stuck in my head, this movie and the pictures of it. And I just remember, Christopher Lee's, I remember the big gnarly face. Right. And there's a couple scenes that much of the film I did not remember. I come to find out, but there were a number of scenes I did remember, like when he chases the girl into what I thought was a printing press, but it's something else entirely. I forget, some kind of water management or something. I'm not really sure what it is, but I remember those scenes. I remember it, just this version of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, even though it's Marlowe and Blake. Which didn't seem to register as not being Jekyll and Hyde when I saw it as a kid. It just, for some reason, just was Jekyll and Hyde, even though they weren't being called Jekyll and Hyde. So now, fast forward way too many decades, and I'm watching it this week, and this movie is, I'm not going to be as kind as you guys. This movie's bad. It's bad. It is not very well written. It's not very engaging. It doesn't do much with the story. I think somebody kind of mentioned that, but in a much friendlier way. I was rather let down by watching it this time. There are moments and there are things I do like, and you guys brought up quite a few of them. There are some of the shots, the 3D shots, that some of them are funny to watch, knowing that they're supposed to be in 3D. Like there's one scene where he's like throws some flame out at the guy or something. He's like, and he chuckles and he throws a bottle. And those are interesting, but there's, for some of the reasons that Bill was bringing up, and I think both Dirk and Jeff mentioned it, that, you know, because the camera always has to be moving, that there are some really interesting shots. There's an overhead shot too that was really cool of Lee coming into the scene and meeting somebody, and you see like all the chandeliers and stuff, and it's coming down below. There's some really interesting things happening. Not enough, but there's some interesting things. The second thing that made this worthwhile watching is of course Lee and Cushing together, but particularly Lee when he is Blake. And Bill, I think you mentioned it. You could tell he's having fun. He doesn't care. He seems to realize this is going to be trash, and he's just going to have a ball, because he is just, like you said, chewing up the scenery. He is. I don't think I've seen him have this much fun. He's always stoic, right? He's always stoic, right? He's always the Dracula, or he's what's the bad guy from Bond that he plays? You know, he's always very tall and very stoic. And here when he's Blake, he's lively, he's moving around, he's smiling, he's chuckling, he's laughing and having a good time. He's hissing at kids and doing gnarly things. And it gets more interesting as it goes, because he gets uglier and uglier, which we've seen. I remember seeing in a couple films through the 70s. I think there's what's the Frankenstein one that was like a 2-part TV one. Is like the Frankenstein monster started out really handsome, right? As Mike Sarrazin, I think, Michael Sarrazin, and then by the end of it, he looked very much like Marlowe does here, or excuse me, Blake. So I like that, but I was really disappointed with the screenplay itself and the dialogue. Didn't seem, it was just, maybe it was at the time, because he's a psychiatrist here, right? He's less a doctor and is a psychiatrist. Not that psychiatrists aren't doctors, but you know what I mean. He's more about that, and he's very much into using this drug to find out about people's true nature, their true past, what they're hiding, what they're afraid to actually reveal, and it leads to all this nonsense. And so there's aspects of it, but I think it's just that it just fails to capitalize on the material in a very strong way. Leans a little too heavily on the cast to pick up the difference. And I think and there's things about it running out of money, and I think you can see that because they don't get very adventurous with any of the, there's only a few sets that they use, right? Except for some of the street sets. But there are times when it actually, like the opening shots when they're walking through London, it's actually very atmospheric. It feels very almost hammerish and gothic in the way that Amicus didn't often go for. So this is a slightly different one. So I'm kind of really torn about this, because I had fond memories of it, and I wanted to remember it and have, I wanted validation that this movie was actually better than I thought it was going to be, and it wasn't. Unfortunately, I still think, and somebody else mentioned this, that if you are a fan of Cushing and Lee, this is definitely a film you want to watch. Sure, even though Cushing is on record saying this was one of his least favorite films to do.
Interesting.
He did not like doing this one.
It was a bad time for him too, right?
Well, yeah, his wife was becoming ill, so so yeah, it was a bad time. But he did not particularly enjoy this this particular film. And then when we get to the director did well. We'll get to that. So anyway, if you're a fan of Amicus, this is slightly different for them because a lot of their films are mostly in the current times of the 70s, 60s, and 70s. A few of them were, I think, The Skull was one that was dated, back as opposed to being in modern times, but not so much with the rest of them. Like all the Portmanteau films were modern, right? Even back to all of them, right? Dr. Terror's House of Horror, even, right? So anyway, that's where I'm going to stop at. Is I can see where this film isn't often remembered, or looked upon with much relish or affection. It struggles to live up, but it is a curiosity piece, definitely worth checking out for those who wish to. And if you listen to this podcast, you more than likely qualify.
Just to insert quickly, I should have thought of this before, but I got a bunch of images for this off of DVD Beaver, which reviews Blu-rays and the images and all that stuff, and they all look absolutely great. The Blu-ray from Indicator is described as a new 2K restoration by Powerhouse Films from original film materials. It includes both the 75-minute theatrical cut and the extended 81-minute version, and tons of other extras, commentaries, and interviews, and stuff like that. So, anyway, just to get that out of the way.
Yeah, and if Chad was here, we'd definitely be talking about how it inspired a DC comic book character, Vampire.
Yeah.
Yes. And a Chicago author named Drew Hunt listed this as one of Christopher Lee's 5 best roles. I don't know if I would go that far, but I can see just because how
I think because it pushes him,
Yeah. Well, yeah, it seems to be having fun. Yeah. He's usually, I mean, he is it's a very unique bad guy for him because he's usually like we said earlier, he's very ominous, and here he's almost a jovial bad guy that still likes to kill people.
Yeah. Well, he lists out of the top 5. What does he list? The Wicker Man, Dracula, Curse of Frankenstein, and The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes, where he plays Mycroft.
Interesting.
Okay.
Yep.
Just an individual's preference.
Yep.
Yeah, I thought that that Lee's portrayal really, and not only just his portrayal, but their choice with the makeup of Hyde or Marlowe was very much like Spencer Tracy.
Blake.
Blake, was reminded me a lot of Spencer Tracy. It was just a lot of him, normal guy, and then just chewing the scenery, and
Well, he also does a lot of acting with his hands. I mean, you mentioned it, but his hands are so they're large.
Like
I think they're abnormally large hands. But
he's
like.
But he starts to like tighten up and
Lugosi thing there,
but his whole body language is looser. At first he's very upright and rigid and proper,
maybe stuffy even.
And I think his Hyde is different enough that it's semi plausible that people wouldn't recognize him. I mean, Spencer Tracy, his Mr. Hyde looks like Spencer Tracy being creepy.
Yeah, but I'll say Christopher Lee doesn't. I mean, we were saying either maybe pre-show that it's hard to believe that no one recognized him when he became Hyde, especially in the early, because he just looks like Hyde with messed up hair.
Right,
it's only kind of towards the end,
teeth
and but that's kind of what reminded me of the Spencer Tracy, is that he just didn't really change too much.
Oh yeah, I did. Right. Tracy would be towards the bottom for me. I do Barrymore, Frederick March.
I love Frederick.
Jack Palance actually. Before I
also
like Palance is pretty evil in his.
I love Frederick March
mostly
because of the transformation effect where they use that the Carl Struess method with the different lighting and makeup. I mean, you can only do that in black and white, but it's so cool when it's done well.
Absolutely.
And the hair, coming back and stuff. And I also this movie might have suffered a bit because I did watch the Frederick March Jekyll and Hyde like
Oh.
3 days before that. So
That's
that was
okay.
probably
Yeah.
that was probably
Yeah.
bad timing. That was probably bad timing on my part. But well, we didn't talk about this beforehand. Chad is not here.
Oh, he's not.
But we have taglines. Who
We
is?
do.
Is
I
it going
think
to?
I think I know.
Who?
Our guest.
Yeah.
I'll
think
do
we-
it.
I think we are going to have Dirk do it. Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's now time for Taglines with Chad, as played by Dirk. The Dirk.
Hey.
But-
All right. I will try to have the same disdain that Chaz does. But
These taglines are
can
worth
can you achieve that? I don't know.
these damn taglines. All right. Oh my God. Okay. When experiments go wrong. That's it. Second one. Yeah. The most violent creature ever made by man.
Wah, wah,
I love
wah.
the most ones. You know,
Yeah.
there's always like another half a dozen that year.
Indeed. Amicus, the studio that dripped blood.
Trying to remind us of a better movie. Okay.
They are.
Yeah.
You saw that movie. Watch this one too.
Yeah.
Here's a doozy.
Oh.
The night you meet the other you is the first night in the age of horror.
Meet the other you.
Other you. Wow.
Well, let's try to wrap it up with a high note.
No. Good
Chad,
luck
this
with
was
that.
for you, brother. Okay, maybe not high note.
How you ready?
The Shivers of the Ice with Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing.
What the actual hell does that even mean?
Okay.
Shivers of the
Well,
ice.
I tried to
Shivers of the
translate a Swedish
Oh,
tagline.
oh, okay.
Ah,
Wow.
okay.
And I'm sure it means something like, you know, this will give you the cold icy shivers
Cold
or
shivers,
something,
yeah.
but it just
Sure.
doesn't come out that way.
No. Oh, well.
Shivers of the ice.
Shivers of the ice.
Shivers of the Ice.
Shivers
I
of
was
the-
thinking Chad
The
would be
Abominable
reading that.
Snowman.
I was going to get a little fun out of doing that, but
I do feel like incorporating the shivers of the ice into my vocabulary now because, you know, it does make you think.
Shivers of the
the
ice.
shivers of
Shivers
the
of
ice.
There's your movie title.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That sounds like a
Shivers of the
Bergman
ice.
film. Yeah.
it does. And that's it.
It's like it was a sequel to Hour of the Wolf.
Yeah.
Shivers
Shivers
of the
Shivers
ice.
of the ice.
Okay. Oh, and that's been Taglines with Chad.
Chad's our hero, cool and rad. With him reading taglines, they can't be that bad.
Just played
All right. Yes, that's played by Dirk. Let's get into some of these really interesting, well, a variety of interesting posters
Hmm.
and artwork for promoting I, Monster, and using as many cool fonts as they possibly can come up with
Yeah.
for the title. What do we think of this one? This is the one that has the most violent creature ever made by man.
not bad.
It's not, yeah, it's fine.
not
And I gotta say, I Monster is a great title.
It is.
I think it is.
It
I-
reminds me of Die Monster Die. Just because of the word
Ooh.
monster. But
Yeah.
yeah.
And the commas.
In the commas, yes. Thank you.
Comments in the title are
the
always
commas.
a plus.
This is a looks like a DVD release for the UK, which it's
It's pretty terrible. This posters.
I guess it is. I kind of like it because of the negative space on the bottom, but
Yeah.
it's not. Yeah,
I'm getting seasick looking at that font.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It is. There was like early.
Mm.
Was it? What was the? I can't remember the software you could use back then to do the fonts like that. So anyway, it doesn't matter. Before Photoshop. All right, and then this is very similar to the
Yeah.
other one.
First one, yeah.
Although I like the skull turned around like that, makes it interesting.
Yeah.
Kind of attached to his head, and then you got
Seems to promise a sexier time than you.
It's got a scandalous lady there at the
Mhm.
bottom.
Yeah, it almost has a little bit of a vibe of a Jack the Ripper.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, more so
Big
than
Ben and the coming over the girl.
Oh, I thought that was a syringe. That's the tower. That's Big Ben, isn't it?
Yeah.
this is syringe. I like that.
Yeah.
Then we have this one, which is
Just another phallic symbol, Bill.
Yeah.
and this one's fairly plain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Again,
really-
kind of more Jack the Ripper, and
It does have more of a Jack the Ripper feel, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
I guess Jack the Ripper is like Britain's Ed Gein. He
Did you
just
think?
Yeah.
some of these guys, they just leave a scar that your culture just has to deal with and try to incorporate into different stuff. And Ed was ours and Jack was theirs, and I don't know what that tells you about the respective cultures.
Well, it took their nation by storm and eventually the world, because everybody knows who he is.
And Americans love good cooking.
Damn straight.
There you go.
Meat's meat and a man's got to eat.
Oh my, there's a different movie.
Yeah.
Right. This was produced and written by Milton Subotsky from Amicus, responsible for
A lot of
I
cool
would
shit.
say a lot of you took the words out of my mouth.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love their portmanteau films. They're
Mhm.
the one that I love the most isn't on this, but I do love Tales from the
Which-
Crypt and Baltimore.
Oh yeah.
Oh, there it is, there it is, Dr. Terror's House of Horrors. I see it now.
Yeah.
And I also love the skull. The skull has because they have the skull
Yeah.
vision. Yeah.
Skull
Well,
Vision. I love City of the Dead, aka Horror Hotel, which is
Yes, it's a
one of my all-time favorites.
It's a good one.
Great movie. A lot of good stuff. I wouldn't say this is one of his zippier scripts.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, he doesn't really inject any surprises in it. He kind of sticks with the source
Mm-hmm.
material. It
And maybe
Doesn't
that
have
was
a
the
lot
goal.
of-
Hey, let's tell let's keep saying Jack the Ripper. Let's tell Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde's story the way it was meant to be told. It's like, well,
Yeah, I kind of feel that is what they were after. They were trying very hard to do that. And I can imagine that's what attracted Lee, because that's what he always wanted with
Mhm.
Dracula as well.
right.
So, and he was a literary guy. So
Mhm.
Mhm.
I can see that. I can see that being the draw.
Yeah.
But it's a lot different than like Scream and Scream Again and other films like The House of Drip Blood, which is the one that they reference in one of our
Yeah.
things. And
I think we've done all of their anthologies except Torture Garden.
Torture Garden, what you got to do.
Ooh.
And of course, they did do the Daleks movies as well. So,
Yes,
Hmm.
yes, they did. Which
Yeah.
Peter Cushing playing the Doctor.
yeah.
He was
Not
a pro-
great movies.
No.
Are they, you don't think so? They're not great movies?
Well, I would say digressing a little bit for the Doctor Who thing. I love Peter Cushing and everything. I don't like his portrayal of the first Doctor, William Hartnell's Doctor in it.
Mhm.
He's a little too grandpa-ish for me.
Mhm.
He is
I
grandpa-ish.
I understand that he was trying to go the exact opposite of what the first Doctor was, William Hartnell's Doctor, which was very gruff and
Mhm.
curmudgeon-y. But I don't know. I think that the second of the Dalek films, I think, is a little tighter, which is just a redo of, I believe, the second season of the actual TV show. I think they just took
is
one
it?
of the stories
Oh.
and they turned that into a movie. But yeah, I don't know. I own both the movies, so who am I going to say? I
No, it's been so long since I've seen them. But is the Doctor Who in those movies an alien? I just got the feeling. He is, because I
he's-
didn't just get that from. I was a kid when I saw these. So
Yeah, it's in the Doctor Who nerds would tell you that Peter Cushing's Doctor doesn't actually factor into the mythology of Doctor Who.
they'll
lot of
tell you
nerds-
that whether you want them to or not. They're
Absolutely true. But a lot of the Doctor Who aficionados would say that the two Peter Cushing movies are actually movies of Doctor Who, of the character Doctor Who in the Doctor Who universe. So it's like,
They're meta.
the kind of. Now I would, okay, so not to digress even further in the Doctor Who, but quickly, I'll just say that in the new series that's now been out for like 15 years or something, in the last iteration of Doctor Who, Jodie Whittaker, well, actually before the last iteration, which was Ncuti Gatwa, the first female Doctor, they do a storyline where they say that actually William Hartnell wasn't the first Doctor, and that there was prior Doctors, and so they're kind of leaving the door open to possibly Peter Cushing being one of those earlier iterations that we've just never met within the series. So take that with a grain of salt.
Okay. All
That would
right.
be
I don't want to be hated by anybody, but I'm not sure I've ever watched a Doctor Who episode all the way through.
Oh,
It just was like too much to even begin to tell.
Yeah, it's
Because
it's difficult. I mean, it's the longest running TV series ever. For me, I mean, they're the two different animals. Again, not to digress from Monster, but they're two different animals of Doctor Who. The first classic series is a lot of fun.
I wasn't asking for explanation.
Sorry, I'm going to give one anyway because I'm a Doctor Who fan. I would say that if you ever want to watch Doctor Who, I would say Peter Capaldi, for me personally, is one of the greatest iterations of any of the Doctors. His delivery, his speeches, his acting.
He's the one that was on when I was like, in the 70s when I was partying in somebody's house. And the TV was on. They'd always have Monty Python on, and then Doctor Who came on right after that. And I think that was
Capaldi.
Oh, that was Peter Brown.
Peter Davidson.
Peter Davidson. Okay,
yeah,
I know it was a Peter.
Anyway, I'm Monster.
They do have some great creatures that are worth. Some of my favorite are the statues. I forget what they're called, but
Weeping Angels.
Weeping Angels. Watching one of those episodes or one of the Christmas episodes the holiday episodes were always really cool. But
yes,
digress indeed. Let's talk about Stephen Weeks, who we don't have a picture of or any of his films, but he directed this. Probably, with that goal in mind to make this 3D straight up version of the source material, running out of money. So I think his direction it takes a hit because of it.
He was only this being his first film. He was only 22 when he directed this.
He was only 22.
Wow,
yes.
Interesting.
And pictures of him, he does look very, very young, and he's got long kind of page boy type hair. Anyway,
but a 22-year-old directing Cushing and Lee, like, oof,
man. There
you guys gotta have some cojones to do that. So
he probably didn't know what he was in for. Oh my goodness. Yeah, because everything before that shorts. It was. Oh my god.
And then he only directed 5 films, and he actually one of those 5 films he redirected, which was Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. And when he remade it, he had Sean Connery in it. So
the Sword of the Valiant.
Sword of the Valiant, yes.
Yeah. So I didn't realize those were just a remake of each other. So that's interesting.
I only through the research on this film I found that out.
There you go. And then he did a movie called Ghost Story in between those.
But not Ghost Story, the Peter Straub Ghost Story.
No. This was 74.
Right.
It may show up someday, but I guess not the biggest. He's got, including the shorts, 13 films. But we're really here probably to talk about the cast, right? So I guess we'll start with Christopher Lee because he deserves to be started with, right? This is him as Marlowe. And you can see he's very almost uptight, everything is, his clothes are all will fit and he's rigid. He's got, it looks like he's going to have a headache or maybe constipated. I don't know. He's not having a good time here.
Not a guy you're going to share a beer with at the local pub.
No.
But they do.
Yeah.
They do. They do. Even though it's not a local pub, it's more like a cigar place, but no cigars are to be found.
But nobody like stands up and cheers when he walks into the pub. Oh, Marlowe, he's not Norm from Cheers at all. He's oh God.
But Peter Cushing's character does call him over and says, "Give us what you're thinking." And they call him like he's got dangerous thoughts, which I thought was strange because
Sigmund Freud. Blah, 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 blah.
And then we have him as a little bit of Blake here coming in.
Yeah, look at him.
The black and white shot's really cool. That's when he's.
Yeah.
Well, he chases the blonde through the streets and then finally whacks her a good one, and then leaves the weapon. He does. What is it? The guy from The Godfather just dropped the gun, right? Drop the gun and run. So.
Yep.
Don't take it with you.
The bloody cane handle.
Luckily, he's living in a time when, like the cop said, if they didn't catch you in the act, they were never going to catch you.
Although somebody did recognize the handle, right? I forget who it was because they had the picture
Cushing.
of it. Cushing did, right? Because it was in the paper. They had a drawing of it, an etching. Like, how do put okay, let's go for it. And then here he is again a little later as he starts. This is what you remember. Although looks like he has the opposite problem down at the bottom. He's no longer constipated.
No, no, he's Jerry Chandler. But that top
he's having
picture,
a shit fit. Is that what?
Yeah, it's like everybody out, all Lexus open.
That looks like a drawing from EC Comics. I mean, that is just
the top one. Yeah,
it is. I do too.
Agreed.
Yeah. I definitely remember the I've seen the middle
nose and warts and bags under his eyes and red.
He's enjoying being bad.
They start showing the patch in the back. Yeah. Which one was it? The one that kind of got it wasn't which Jekyll and Hyde did he start getting the cone head? Was that Barrymore?
Frederick
Start
March.
getting the what?
It gets more of a cone head in the back.
Frederick March.
That's Barrymore.
I thought
is it Barrymore?
Yeah. Well, March I think did it a little bit, but he had more hair.
Yeah.
Right.
March was more simian, which, as I recall, that's actually how Hyde was sort of described in the novel.
Well, he kind of is here too. He's more. I mean, he's definitely a degenerate of human nature, not
right.
Yeah. So, but it's an interesting look, and I think even though you guys gave the film more credit than I did, I think the makeup here is one of the saving graces of it. His portrayal along with the makeup, and he's very expressive with it, as you can see in the bottom picture alone. Yeah. He's having a great time with it. So.
Yeah, his makeup's really subtle, and I was actually kind of impressed at the end when they do the dissolve on his face and he turns back human, how far the progression actually goes, because the entire time I was watching it, I mean, towards the end he has the real ugly look, but when he falls and dies, and then you start to see him progressing back to his original self, I was impressed with how much of a distance it is from the end result, from the beginning of the film to the end, because it was, like I said, with the Spencer Tracy kind of a thing, it's very subtle and it's a lot of facial acting, but yeah, it's a really cool makeup. It's subtle, but it's really neat. It really relies on his abilities.
Yeah, it never really gets too far away from Christopher Lee, the actor. Right. What did you think of the final shot with the Christopher Lee's face in the foreground, and then Cushing and I guess is it the maid that's kind of on the steps? Yeah.
With the smoking body. I thought that was
smoking body. Yes.
Yeah, I thought it was great, and it's a great shot. The mise en scene is very pleasant to the eye.
Well, they have a knockdown, drag out fight up in the bedroom. I mean, they're at each other's throats.
Well, they've done a few tries at this.
Oh yeah,
and they will have a couple more in the coming years back at Hammer. So they'll do 2 in 1 movie with Dracula 72.
Wow.
Right. Here's a couple of our co-stars, our female co-stars.
Well, this is another thing I kind of like, because they show him after he kills the cat, then they show him give it to a couple of his patients. And what how they change. And so the top woman is the first one, and she was a very straightforward, almost kind of prudish woman, played by Susan Jameson, and then she becomes much more
slutty.
Yeah. Slutty, yeah. And then when she comes out of it, is mortified to remember what she did. The other one, which was I don't think we have a picture, but Kenneth J. Warren was he was like a bully business owner or something, and he turns into a sniveling coward, you know,
or like a little boy almost.
Yeah, so it was, I thought that was kind of neat. And then so the bottom woman here is the barmaid Margie Lawrence. The character's name is Annie, and she disses him pretty big in front of everybody in the pub, and so he follows her out.
Yeah,
that's all she wrote.
How many victims are there in this movie, really? I mean, one her, and then the other guy dies of a heart attack just because he transformed in front of him, right? He goes, he falls over. Yeah. So, I mean, does that count? It's scared to death, maybe?
Kind of. Well, yeah, the cat, the barmaid. Who else dies? That's pretty much.
Well, I think there's a kid. We don't.
Yeah,
we don't really get to see that.
On the little girl.
They talk about it. Yeah.
Ooh, that's right. That's right.
Well, I don't think that the little girl died because they make a point of that he went back to the house with the parents, and if he had killed the kid, he would have been in jail. So, but instead he paid him off. So I'm guessing that the little, at least in the original story, the little girl doesn't die.
Right. He tramples her.
Right.
He doesn't. Yeah.
Right, and then that's where they find out that Marlowe paid the bill. Right.
Exactly.
When they cashed the check, they gave him some money in that check, and then they were surprised that it went through. Yeah, that was a whole big spiel between our some of our characters here we're going to look at in a second. Yeah, and then we have the rest of our crew, the three at the top: Peter Cushing, of course, Mike Raven, and Dirk. Who's the last guy?
Richard Herndl.
Yeah. So we got Mike Raven flanked by two who's?
Yeah. Who's who?
Who's on first?
And then Dr. or Count Karnstein. Karnstein.
And then down below, Jeff, you were mentioning this young man.
Well, I recognized him as an actor, but I didn't realize how big he was in music as well. So I'll never be able to. I mean, he was in To Sir with Love, and he was also in Eastwood's Pink Cadillac. So ranging the decades. And apparently in To Sir with Love, his character was always wearing sunglasses, and Sidney Poitier was always grabbing them off his face. And he said that over the years, whenever he encountered Sidney Poitier, he would grab his sunglasses, and then they would laugh about it, Anyway,
and of course
he played a nasty character on MacGyver.
Murdoch,
remembers that Murdoch. So,
and of course, I'm sorry. Go ahead, keep talking.
Well, I don't know. See, this is stuff I don't know because I didn't follow these people. But he was the touring singer for the Duran Duran spin-off group, the Power Station.
Power Station, yep. He replaced Robert Palmer when they couldn't do it in 1985. So if you're an 80s music band, you definitely saw him there.
And he did some, he was in a bunch of other bands. And I'm thinking of somebody else now. Back to MacGyver. Oh, he was a guest on WKRP and then was on the later one, the remake, which I didn't even know existed. The new WKRP in Cincinnati from 1991.
There was a new one?
That's what it says.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
Missed that
Probably didn't care.
His first band was called Silverhead. In 1972, they had 2 albums, toured U.S., Europe, and Japan. Anyway, I think people that are really in the music scene will recognize him.
Yeah, there'll be plenty of people out there that will tell us all about him. If you know, let us know in the comments. Power Stations, definitely remembered him from there.
So he has a gaunt look, and I just you know, I saw an interview with him, and he was wearing a black velvet. I can't think of the designer now. Black velvet jacket from 1964. Might have been Ralph Lauren. Leather pants and John Lennon boots. And his fingernails were painted purple. Because the interview commented on all this stuff, and he just said, I have my own style, and I'm very dedicated to it. And he loves stuff from that era. You know. Anyway.
Good for him.
So, he doesn't have a big part in this. He just mouths off to the wrong the wrong
Monster.
chemically, the wrong monster.
The wrong monster. And that's another time that Christopher Lee actually chuckles in this movie after he beats him, because he does that fake thing where everybody thinks he slit his throat.
Yeah,
Yes.
that was cool.
One interesting bit for 80s fans, and you guys are probably screaming at this if you are. If you're familiar with a song called "Obsession" by Animotion. He penned that song. He's
Good for him.
Yep.
Probably
Spending
made
a
a lot of money
ton
off
of
that song too.
Back to I think this was Susan Jameson's first film role. I thought they said that. And she's got over 100 credits. Well, I don't know. There's a lot of episodes of TV series throughout the 60, but this does appear to be her first film role. Yep. Even though she's got a couple dozen TV appearances before that.
Including UFO, which is probably a show that some of our fans remember. In Space 1999, very similar.
And I think
Cool.
the one on the bottom, I believe that she was in. Let me look before I say something stupid and have to cut it. I was thinking she was in Hands of the Ripper.
Yeah, I think she gets killed in Hands of the Ripper.
Is she the one that gets like something like needles stabbed in her face?
Yeah, I think she's she's rather bosomy in this thing. You know,
Yeah,
she's
she
playing the flirty barmaid, and I think that's kind of the same kind of part she plays in Hands of the Ripper.
Yeah, she plays a character called Dolly
in
Hands of the Ripper. So.
All right.
That does show off her talents.
Her talents, both of them.
Well, I mean, she's a good actor. I can say that. I was trying to think of a better word, and then I just went low rent. So
You're low rent. I love it. I love it. What else do we want to say about this
Assets.
particular assets? There you
go. Well, I personally, I like to touch on the cinematographer, Mohr Grant, because I do think some of the cinematography in the film is pretty cool. And like I said earlier, it really kind of stood out to me. The camera moves, and I think Jeff said it earlier. When Christopher Lee's character comes up to the little girl in the cage, and the camera kind of goes around, and just in the opening scenes with the cameras kind of going around and going to the face. Mohr Grant, cinematographer on things like Old Dark House, Tomb of Lygia, Quatermass, and The Pit, Devil Rides Out, Vampire Circus.
Well,
In
camera
operator / and also cinematographer on some of the later ones. But this I, Monster landed. He did the year prior, he did Scars of Dracula, and then the year after this, he did Vampire Circus. So
right,
I love
and those were
Vampire
cinematographer. Yeah. Scars of Dracula, Horror of Frankenstein, The Vampire Lovers. You guys. And I thought I saw something about the maybe you mentioned this, but the camera operator on The Day the Earth Caught Fire. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. I did not mention that, but yes.
Camera operator on Chad's favorite movie, Gurley.
There you go.
Wouldn't have got that one.
Chad, why aren't you here for these? Jeez, you miss this stuff. Mumsy, Nanny, Sonny, and Gurley.
Oh, yes. Okay, now I know.
Yeah. I love the fact that the art directions are by Tony Curtis and the makeup department is Peter Frampton, but they're neither
Yes.
one of those are the
Right.
names that you think
I
of.
looked. I definitely looked for the Peter Frampton one.
Yeah, the makeup artist actually is Harry Frampton.
Harry
But he
Well,
did have
the-
a son. He had a son named Peter Frampton, and I
Yes.
thought that was that Peter
Well,
Frampton. But it turns out he's
He was
just a makeup artist.
uncredited and worked on this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Harry Frampton, he did like a lot of the Peter Sellers Pink Panther movies. He also did Deathline, aka Raw Meat.
Ooh.
And he
and
did the
then-
dripping nose and the Pink Panthers. Like kind of
Want to say you like with the
Ooh.
where you look like a gangster, the parrot and the
yeah, and
all-
his
all-
nose starts to melt.
yeah.
Oh, I've watched too many Pink Panther
Frenzy?
movies.
Frenzy, yeah,
Y-
yeah.
you know,
Hitchcock.
The swollen tongues and the bulging eyes.
Ooh.
Straw
And then he did
dogs.
Straw Dog, yeah.
Oh,
Again,
sorry. Yeah.
no, I was gonna say he did one of my like guilty pleasures, which is Dr. Sin, aka the
I love that
Scarecrow.
one.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
those are
Do
awesome.
you? Okay.
I've got to go look for that again. I was just noticing. I think that's probably on Disney Channel.
Yeah, that's
Should be.
I love that when I was a kid. The Scarecrow and Swamp Fox were the two ones that I really loved. Swamp Fox was another guy in the Revolutionary War that was
Mhm.
like
Nice.
All
Very cool.
right. Well, I think we didn't quite make it an hour and 15 minutes as much as the movie, but I think we're going to count that as a blessing this time
Right.
around.
Oh, we got some feedback too.
We got some feedback we want to get to, but this movie, of course, is available on the Play Now Media channels. I did it off the
classic horror.
Classic Horror Movie channel, yeah, and it's also available on Wicked channel or which
Yeah,
one?
Wicked Horror TV.
Wicked
yeah.
Horror TV. Okay, so check
DVD.
those out, and yes, DVD and currently a Blu-ray from England as well.
Hey,
So if you feel so inclined, check it out and let us know what you think, or if you just remember seeing it back in the day, we'd love to hear from you. And of course, you can also check us out on Patreon, and we are on Patreon. We are covering for patron only members. Call Check the Night Stalker episode by episode as we are winding down the last 8 or so episodes. Fun stuff, well worth signing up for alone to catch those episodes. So check those out. And with that, I think we should just move right on in
Yep.
to feedback. So let's
Okay.
do that.
feedback.
First one is Robert Mueller 2023 is back. I think he took some time off for summer vacation, but he makes a comment on 192. Let's scare Jessica to death. That's a sweet 63 Cadillac Duncan had. Woody, then the character Woody says, it's cheaper than a station wagon. Anyway. And then
Okay.
196, Lust for a Vampire. King Porter 67 said, I did watch this horror movie and it was good.
That's a
I love
statement.
Just straight to the point.
Knows
Yeah,
what he likes.
Exactly. Okay, now episode 224, Moon of the Wolf from Red Willow 79, Shippers 94.
I love it. Two people together. Fine.
Wow.
Sure.
Doc, you want to take that one?
Sure. Red Willow and Chippers. So Shippers. Okay, we'll just go with it. Moon of the Wolf is great. It was a blind buy for me from Vinegar Syndrome. I love the characters, the location, and I even kind of like the werewolf.
I bought it too, Red Willow.
Ah,
Of course you did.
that goes without saying.
Yeah.
Lee Breadman says, great movie.
I love how many people love this movie. Yeah.
Short to the point. Jose, Bill, would you like to read one from Jose on Moon of the Wolf?
Sure. Jose Luis Herrero. Oh man, so many things. Jose said, nice pick. I've not heard of this one, and it's great to hear about a diamond in the coal, so to speak. True. When I think of Jeffrey Lewis, I always think of Mike in the rocking chair in Salem's Lot.
Yes.
Teacher, look at me. You just described my day. Royal Dano. Is it Dano or Dano?
I don't know.
Okay, Royal, the man who was in everything ever. I always think of Killer Clowns and the Seven Faces of Dr. Lowe when his name is mentioned.
Wow.
You know, I mentioned this on Classic here on Sunday that I've started rewatching Twin Peaks, and I'm starting to think that I never watched the last third of the episodes. Like I got to a point and I don't know, got busy and got tired of it. And who pops up the other day but Royal Dano as the circuit judge who bops in for a couple days with a beautiful, what do they call the lawyers, the people that work for lawyers?
Criminals?
No. Apprentice. They're like an apprentice or something. Anyway, beautiful woman working for him, following him everywhere he goes and doing whatever he says. But anyway, he was hilarious. That guy is everywhere. The man who was in everything. Man, thanks, Jose. And then from Lone Wolf, Dirk.
Lone Wolf says, Moon of the Wolf, for some strange reason, was something I caught on TNT back when TNT wasn't a graveyard for reruns. Even then, I vaguely remembered it. Years later on Tubi, I managed to sit through all of it, and I loved it.
Yes.
Every time I see Jeffrey Lewis, I always think of his daughter and how they've both become connected to horror. Funny how Jeffrey was in 2 TV films that involved vampires and werewolves. The mystery plot certainly works for the film. Love all the actors and their roles. Love the setting. Yes, I was a little Cajun boy from Louisiana, wrestling gators. And though the length rope design was underwhelming, it was still somewhat effective. This was another great discussion. Stay groovy, Grue Crew.
Thank you.
I got to start keeping a database of our commenters, so under Lone Wolf, I could put Louisiana Cajun boy.
Yeah,
develop their characteristics and
Gator wrestler.
Yeah.
And from Scott Wells, Doctor.
Oh, is it my turn again? Yay! Scott says, I saw this when it aired, or at least part of it. I used to get this one confused with Scream of the Wolf from 1974. Another made-for-TV one you folks might find interesting.
Dan Curtis.
I've always liked this one, though, and I revisited several times over the years. The most recent time I watched it, it aired on a local horror host show. And I about died laughing when at the scene where the sheriff meets the rich brother and sister, and he makes a comment about meeting a Rodan, and the host injected a monster scream from the Rodan kaiju film right as the heroine walks out. Loup Garou lore is interesting and complex, and I always find it interesting when the film explores it. They simplify it most of the time to be just a werewolf, but it's a bit more than that. Great show, and thanks.
And oh, by the way, Johnny Quest, I watched the Loup Garou episode.
There you go.
It's amazing how those theme songs take you back. You hear the first few notes and boom, you know the rest of it. It just takes off. Also, Scream of the Wolf stars Clint Walker. I'm just saying. All right, on to episode 225, Vampires, from Jerry Chandler. And it's always funny how Bill comes up.
It's always funny.
It just happens naturally too. It just happens.
Just lucky, I guess.
This is pretty good. Pretty good though.
The most beautifully shot vampire movie for which they really didn't have much of a plot and barely had a script. Yeah, he makes great points. I'd love to have been a fly on the wall for the pitch meeting on this one. You would have liked to have been a fly on the wall when they were shooting this movie. Don't lie. Okay, so here's the 2 actresses who want to cast as our lead vampires. Will shoot very artistically whenever they're largely naked on screen, so a lot of very stylish scenes in a lot of the film. Maybe even a few where they have their clothes on. Okay, but what's the plot? They're frequently naked vampires. They're traveling and killing people. That's an idea, but you have to give me a pitch for a plot. They'll be naked and topless a lot and shot very artsy, stylish, traveling, killing people. Again, I need a plot. They're also into each other, very much so, noticeably so in the film. Reaches into desk drawer, pulls out a checkbook. So, how much did you say you needed for the budget, and when can you start? I think that's pretty much how it went. Yeah, it was the 70s. My thoughts on the My thoughts on the film are still what they have always been. If they cared as much about the writing as they did for some of the visuals, this would be awesome. As it stands, it's an oddly pleasant diversion when you want a vampire film that's not quite run-of-the-mill and better done than stuff like Vampire Hookers.
Vampire hookers.
Besmirching vampire hookers. Oh, no, fair enough.
Dare
Yeah,
you.
you're right. Yeah.
They're going to besmirch.
Thanks, Jerry.
Big vampire hookers.
Yeah. Yep. And from Eleanor C., our correspondent in, I apologize, Eleanor, it's either Czech Republic or Poland. I get it mixed up. I think she's translated Polish for us once and then talked about going to a convention in Prague. So I'm not sure, but all those things could be true at the same time.
I think Dirk, you've been in Prague before, haven't you?
I have. Just last year. Doing some vampire stuff.
Ooh. So Eleanor C. on vampires. Dirk.
Oh, gotcha. Eleanor C. says, I've never heard of this movie, but I came across the remake a few years back when I was digging through Marilyn Monroe's filmography. I didn't have a chance to watch either of them, so I'll be adding them to my mile-long list of movies to watch. No, Chad, I wasn't joking, but I am sorry Jeff made you read it. Like I said before, its weird humor reminds me of old Czechoslovakian comedies I grew up watching. I think we just got our answer.
Yep.
It also probably says something about my sense of humor. Again, sorry. I Monster. Yay, I like this film a lot. I watched it recently because I got my hands on the Blu-ray with director's commentary. But I'll watch it again before the next episode. Thank you.
It may be the same one because the Indicator one has a commentary from the directors. And when he says, funny how this comes up twice in one episode. She said, I wasn't joking. She's talking about how much she likes the movie Mumsy, Nanny, Sonny, and Gertie.
That movie comes up a lot now, doesn't it?
I think we should read that again when Chad's back. I
Yeah.
just think. And by the way, folks, he's just taking care of business. He shall return. That's it for the feedback. We really appreciate it. Folks can leave feedback and comments on the Gruesome Magazine YouTube channel. That's the easiest way for us to collect them, but feel free to leave comments on the Gruesome Magazine H&R and DOH podcast Facebook group, or send them to feedback@gruesomemagazine.com. That email address will find its way to us. And thank you, Eleanor, Jerry, Scott, Lone Wolf, Jose, Lee Bredman, Red Willow Shippers. I just love that. King Porter and Robert Mueller, 2023.
Thank you.
All right. And we have our film selected for our next episode. Jeff picked it out. It is called The Stone Tape from 1972. It's playing on Shudder and AMC Plus. It was requested by Andy L. and Wes Diorio. It's a 1972 British television horror drama written by Nigel Neal and directed by Peter Sadzey. And it stars Michael Bryant and Jane Asher. Is there anything else, Sir Jeff, that you want to add to that?
It's a it's a typical British television film. So you know all the time it's being shot on a stage like thing, right? I mean, it just feels that way, but it gets kind of freaky towards the end.
All right, The Stone Tape
gave me some goosebumps, and I think even more than Andy and Wes had requested it as well. Something I've had several people talk about.
I have not seen this, so I am very curious about it. I can't wait. Dirk, thank you for joining us.
Thank
you,
man.
Always a
pleasure to
pleasure.
join you guys.
Looking forward to coming back again in the near future, please.
Indeed.
And
Very soon.
Jeff, Bill, thank you so much. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it was
All
fun.
right.
Fun.
All right.
Good pick.
With that, let's say goodnight.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Goodbye.